You may have heard a lot about the benefits of a living trust, but now we need to take a look at what are the disadvantages of a living trust. If you're going to get started and you're thinking about a living trust, you need to know the benefits, but you also need to know the disadvantages. That's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. In this video, you'll learn exactly what you need to know about the cost associated with setting up a living trust. I'll share with you the paperwork involved with a trust compared to other estate plans. You'll identify the steps involved in getting your trust executed. I'll provide you with the steps that have to be taken in order to fund your trust. You'll see how trusts actually work and why people so often misunderstand them. I'll show you how to handle real estate and other assets when it comes to a trust. You'll understand the government's role in living trusts. At the end of this video, I've got a free gift for you. I make videos like this all the time, so feel free to like and subscribe to our channel. Okay, when we're taking a look at the disadvantages of a living trust, the primary disadvantage is the cost. Now, I know a lot of times people will think, well, wait a second, it's just so much more expensive to set up a trust than it is to maybe set up a will or some other type of estate plan. Well, does it really cost that much more? Well, initially, yes, it does. So that is something that could be perceived as a disadvantage. But I'm going to tell you, one of the benefits is that you're going to save so much money by avoiding the probate process that that initial upfront cost pales in comparison. So sure, that's a disadvantage. Right now, the cost is going to be a little bit greater than with other types of estate plans, but you will see tremendous benefits by taking that step and doing what it takes to get that trust set up. You know, another disadvantage with a trust is that there is more paperwork involved in a living trust than there is with other types of estate plans. Now, there's going to be a lot of components of your overall estate plan that are going to be exactly the same, whether it's a will, a trust, or whatever else you may be using. What we have to focus on is that, sure, there's more paperwork, but that provides us with greater opportunities. You know, this greater paperwork is going to outline what the trust is going to do, what it can't do, what the trustee can do, what the trustee cannot do, how the trustee is going to manage things, because that money is held in trust for the beneficiary. That's something that we need to understand is, how does a trust actually work? Now, the way trusts work are basically, a trust is essentially a holding vessel for assets. You know, in any trust arrangement, you have a trustor, that's the person that sets it up, a trustee, that's the person that manages it, and the beneficiary, that's the person that receives the benefits from the trust. So in a trust arrangement, basically what we are doing is transferring our assets into the trust so that then they can be distributed to our heirs and beneficiaries whenever we pass away. Now, it's a great way to do this. That additional paperwork can provide us with opportunities to put things in place, such as maybe a substance abuse provision. Obviously we hope our children or grandchildren or other heirs and beneficiaries don't have that type of, challenges, but things happen. We've got to make sure we prepare for this. We've got creditor protection in the event that maybe a lawsuit is filed against one of your heirs and beneficiaries, which, hopefully that doesn't happen. But again, a divorce is a lawsuit, isn't it? So we want to make sure that we don't have a divorced spouse that ends up taking our assets. Well, that's part of what the additional paperwork takes care of. What if you have an S corporation? Well, there's got to be a clause that allows for your trust to own the shares of stock in that S corporation. There are a lot of different things that have to be factored in. That's why there's additional paperwork. I don't really look at this as a disadvantage. I look at it as an advantage. It's a tremendous way to plan your estate. Now, one of the most important things you've got to remember, which I guess you could say this is a disadvantage, is that a trust must be funded in order to be effective. Now, if you set up a will for your overall estate plan, you don't have to worry about transferring the assets into the will. The will basically governs how those assets are going to be distributed upon your death. Well, with a trust, it only covers what's been transferred into it. That's called the process of funding your trust. A lot of people misunderstand that because they hear funding and they think about, okay, so am I borrowing money? Is this a lender situation? No, funding your trust basically means transferring your assets into it, whether that's bank accounts, whether it's real estate, whether it's ownership of legal entities, business interests. You've got to make sure that those assets are transferred into the trust. So sure, there's additional paperwork involved in that, and it's additional labor that's going to be involved, but that's how you get the benefit. So is it a disadvantage? well, there's a little more work, but the benefits are worth the additional work. Now, another disadvantage that I would really take a look at is I think people often misunderstand trust. They don't understand them, or maybe even greater, that misunderstanding, which they have certain ideas about trust. Sometimes people think about a trust and they say, okay, so if I transfer my assets into a trust, now I have to be part of a bank trust department. I'm going to have to go to a trust officer to gain access to my money. No. Basically, this is going to be something you control it the way you always have. You control your assets, you control your bank account, you control your business. Everything operates the same way. The challenge here is that people just don't understand because it's not something that we're taught. I mean, think about it. Were you taught about trust when you're going to school? I don't think so. Even if you went to law school, you didn't have to take a course on trust. The reality is trust are things that can provide us with tremendous benefits, but people just don't understand them because they haven't dealt with them. A lot of times when you go into a bank and you say, I want to open an account or change the title of my bank account into the name of the trust, they think you're opening a trust account, which is a totally different activity, totally different transaction. So because of that misunderstanding, that could be perceived as a disadvantage. However, we always remember the trust provides us with tremendous opportunities. That's the great benefit. Okay, we've got to take a look at what happens when you borrow money for real estate, maybe for your personal residence, as an example, I guess. Also maybe rental properties, different things like that. Having to do refinancing can be a little more complicated with the trust. When I work with clients, one of the things that I always make sure that I assure them is they're worried about if they transfer the title to their property into a trust, is it going to trigger the due on sale clause? Is the bank going to call their note due and make them get a new loan? Well, not if it's a trust, because there's a specific exclusion to the act that allows banks to call notes due. They wanted to keep people from transferring their mortgage to somebody else that may not have demonstrated creditworthiness, and they want to make sure that they have kind of protection against that. Well, here you are still on the hook, basically. You still have liability to pay back your mortgage. We're not trying to get out of that, but it's just now it's in the trust, so we're not worried about it. The loan is still in your name. The title to the property is in the trust. Let me share that again because you may not have followed that. What we are doing is we're not transferring the title out of your name into somebody else's name. No, we're transferring it into your trust. You still have the obligation to pay the mortgage. The bank has no liability right there whatsoever as far as there's nothing that they have to protect against. That's a tremendous benefit. Well, it does have to be retitled. That's one of the things that we've got to factor in because remember, we've got to fund that trust in order to get the benefits. So it can be more complicated. I've had clients that have refinanced their properties and the bank will say, hey, we want to take it out of the trust, do the refinance, and then put it right back in. Well, that's not difficult, but it can scare people. I want to make sure you're not scared. That's why we're providing you with this valuable information so that you'll know how to gain maximum benefit and not worry about these disadvantages. Okay, here's another disadvantage. If you have a revocable living trust and you've properly funded it and you've operated completely the way that we advise our clients to do it, there's not going to be any probate. As such, you're not going to have the government's involvement in supervising the transfer of your assets when that time comes. Now, did I just say the disadvantage is that the government is not going to supervise your assets? I guess you could look at that as a disadvantage. To me, that's one of the greatest advantages of having a living trust is that the government's not involved. We don't want the government involved. Not that we're trying to avoid anything, but I just tell you people, it's none of the government's business. Privacy, protection. You see, when you go through probate, that's a matter of public record. Do you suppose there may be some unscrupulous individuals out there that are scouring obituaries to find out who may have passed away and whose family may need their comforting? Well, if that doesn't scare you, I can tell you it terrifies me. There are people that are like that. We've got to keep this out of the public record. Probate is a matter of public record. A living trust keeps that from happening. So once again, the disadvantage, the government's not involved. To me, that's not a disadvantage, it's a tremendous advantage. I covered this and so many more strategies in my free mini course that I make available for you. It's called Enlightened Estate Planning. And as part of that mini course, which by the way, I'm making it available to you absolutely free. All you have to do is click the link below to access that course. And again, did I mention it was free? The great thing about this is that I firmly believe that you need a plan for your estate. Because I hate to put it this way, but you're going to die. And as a result, you need to take care of your family. Through my mini course, Enlightened Estate Planning, I share with you step by step how to do that. And I make this available for you absolutely free. Just click the link below and you can gain access to that course. I'm JJ Childers. Thanks so much for watching.